This is why it would be good to harmonize this aspect. This is taken from prose, okay? It's a translator sending a question. Help me with this one, says the translator. I've done a translation from French to English of a diploma from a Belgian university. And now the client asks for it to be sworn. All right? I am English and live in England. The client is Belgian and lives in Belgium, I guess. And I got the work via a Swedish agency. I do not know the client. Sort that one out. How do you go about it? What's the answer? If it were to be sworn, in what country should it be sworn in? If it were to be legalized, where would it have to be legalized? Any guesses? Okay, there is an answer, but you have to dig around a lot to find it. This translation should have been done in the court system of the town in Belgium where the university is located. Okay? Because the court near the university has a list of translators who are authorized to do a certified translation into English. So it should never have gone to the agency. It should never have gone to somebody actually in England. The reality of the market is this is the way it's working. Translation is a cross-border activity in Europe. The agencies are operating across borders systematically for good reason, because they can get good translators in the home countries of the languages working together. And so the configuration of the profession is in radical contradiction with the national way in which translators are being authorized for legal work. Okay? And this is where I'm getting at. This is the problem with sociology, as we'll see. That the configuration of the profession is already radically transnational. The certification systems, such as they exist, are heavily nationalized, but arbitrarily so. Okay. Our clients, I'm just getting into the facts. I'm presenting facts such as we found them. The clients asked about the role of professional associations. So we found out about associations. We found out that associations do a lot of very different things, to the extent that it's not the one sociological category. And the definition of the term association is very stretched at the ends. Certified Institute of Linguists and the American Translators Association are certifying bodies, and their certification system has a definite market value. Others are more like unions protecting workers' rights, increasingly among interpreters, public service interpreters in Britain, very highly unionized. I'll tell you why in a minute. Increasingly, associations are places people go to get information on new translation memory systems, new technologies, desktop publishing, machine translation, or they get training in these new things. It's a place for lifelong learning. Some are job agencies. The job agency thing is really done by things like PROS, online client-translator contact websites. That's where that's moving to. But we have found cases of translators associations, particularly of graduates from a particular institution, go there and share clients. So it does work as a job agency, doing something quite different. And in Greece, Cyprus, and Estonia, and in France, I might add, we have associations of alumni from particular schools who enjoy the social contact. And sociability, social contact underlies all these things. All these associations do help provide moral support for each other and a collective identity. Now, what's interesting is that if the associations were to send out strong signals of quality, if being a member of the association meant you were a better translator, where does the association get its prestige and trustworthiness from? Traditionally, in these professions, a strong signal is sent by an association that is big and has been around for a long time and has gained prestige because of that, because they have, and third factor, sorry, a fairly rigorous selection, entrance selection mechanism of some kind. Now, this is a timeline of the creation of associations. This is limited to the European Union countries in this case. And there are, sorry, no, it's including the ATA, I'm sorry. That's the ATA, about 10,000 members, American Translators Association, right out there, okay. This, I think, is a BDU in Germany. The German Translators Association claims about 7,000 members. And around here, you get the translation section of the Chartered Institute of Linguists in Britain. Now, what's fascinating for me is that all these things, they're setting up translation associations as we speak. No, we found 3 that were set up last year while we were doing the research. People, you know, you would think that if an association were to send a strong signal of quality, you would belong to these ones. Or these ones in the 50s, which were founded in the heroic age of translation studies when we had the FIT was founded, the CUT was founded, the AIC was founded. All of these are French names, actually. The institutions of translation studies were set up in the 50s and 60s, and these are the big national associations which do work fairly well in their countries. Okay? But then all of these things have come along. What are they doing? They're messing up the signaling mechanism. It stands to reason. If you have one association in a country, and then 20 years later you've got 12, sorry, Spain I think has 14, huh? The signal that was being sent before is distorted. You've got a lot of noise coming from a lot of small associations. What happened? How did that happen? Why are these people here? Well, here's more or less the potted history. It depends on the country. The large prestigious ones, 50s and 60s. In the 70s, literary people found they were not happy with the professional concerns of other translators, and you get the founding of literary translators, although the first one over there in Greece, I think it's 1894, was for literary translators. Anyway, interpreters move out at the same time. They think they need a separate form of representation. 70s and 80s, separate ones for sworn and legal translators because they think they have a closed shop kind of profession, which is not like the others. Now, in the 80s, this is particularly true of Spain. You get different associations for the different regional languages, but you also find it in France because of the court system. So you get a separate association for legal translators, and then for each region in France, you get another association of court translators. 1990s and into the 2000s, audio-visual translators have set up their associations because they recognize they have problems that are quite different from the rest of the profession. And then in the 2000s, you get a lot of really small associations, legally set up as associations, but based on highly interactive websites. The big ones set up in the 50s and 60s don't know how to use an interactive website. You can look at I should have shown you some websites, a non-functional website. But these ones here are offering the job market contacts, the immediate social support, the discussion groups, good information on new releases of software, and doing things that the big ones couldn't do and can't do. Okay. Occasionally, the ATA has been very good, actually, in maintaining the rhythm and updating itself, incorporating these new technologies, but many haven't. What you can see there is, in a nutshell, the fragmentation of the profession in Europe. You can trace it through the associations. Okay? And what you can also see is that if the associations had a strong signal, many of them have been losing it because of the creation of noise, quite simply. This is where I start to toy with the empirical association. I actually like playing with numbers. This is my empiricist confession, Edwin. Okay, I enjoy this stuff. We had a previous figure put out by people called Common Sense Advisory. And they estimated, based on macroeconomic data and the size of big localization companies, that there were about 700,000 professional translators in the world. We used a different methodology. We went to the countries where the census data and taxation data does keep lists of how many professional, self-declared translators and interpreters there are. That is, who's a professional translator and interpreter? Anyone who declares that in their census return form or tax return form. Okay? I think there are only 5 countries that actually do that, but we had a crazy economist called Parker who had calculated the potential translation market for every country and every city in the world based on macroeconomic data. So, but he didn't say how many people. He said how many millions of dollars are in the translation market for every country in the world. Very rough, okay. So we got these countries, checked the data, and did the math, and came up with 333,000 professional translators, more or less. Now, why would I be interested in that? It could be plus or minus 100,000, all right? But it's not 700,000. Why would I do that? Well, just having a basic orientation as to how many professional translators and interpreters are required according to macroeconomic data says a lot about certain countries. You can add up the number of people in the associations in each country, that is, how many people are doing the activity, enough to belong to an association, and then compare it with the potential market. And you find, okay, red, you find some places, including Italy, but not exclusively Italy, where members of the association are less than 20%. Now, this could be a good thing if the signal is strong. Okay, so in Ireland, it might be a very good thing. You're part of the elite. But if the signaling is weak, Stefano, do you know the name of the Translators Association in Italy? Pretty good. Okay, that's all right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. There are other ones.
What is interesting is that the literary translators are not part of the Association of Interpreters and Translators, but are part of a sort of association of writers.
Yes, that's very common. There are many cases of that. We had to calculate how many translators there were in the greater one. But the point is, in Italy, the absolute numbers are still very low, but the signaling is not strong, that the market is not looking for membership of the association in order to pay more money. Okay? But that's one thing. And the rest is more or less acceptable. What is intriguing is that for some countries, we get more than 100%. What does that mean? More people are translators and interpreters than the market can justify. What? What went wrong? You go back to the numbers, what went wrong in our data? What you find is that the culprits are all small countries. Boom. Okay. Croatia. Help me. Slovakia. Yeah. Denmark, Finland, Estonia. Okay. And partly what's happened is that the European accession to the European Union has created such a new demand for translators because the language becomes an official EU language that in these countries, Slovakia, I think it's 3 times what the macroeconomic data can justify. Okay, so you get this new configuration of the market. Sorry? Romania is an exceptional case because in Romania, anybody with a degree in modern languages is recognized as an authorized translator. So they have a list of something incredible, I don't know, 30,000 translators on the book for a market that requires about 700. You know, there's just this massive imbalance. Okay, I won't insist too much, but the other explanation for the very high percentages, 75 is a lot. will be found later on. The fact is, if you have an oversupply of translators, like the case in Romania, it's not here because I didn't count it as an association. If you have an oversupply of translators, the signaling will be weak. If everybody is qualified, then nobody's qualified. If every car is a lemon, then, yeah, okay. We did interviews with employers, and we looked at previous surveys of employers. Not surprisingly, they don't trust anybody really. They give more weight to experience, actually to word of mouth. They're very good at phoning up another employer to check out how a translator works. They run their own tests, but beware, some of them do the tests and get free translations done for their business. Okay? There's all sorts of cowboys out there. Okay? But this field, technical translation, what's called localization, in Europe, very few signs of market disorder, very few signs of good translators leaving. What tends to happen is good translators stay in the company, become in-house, move up to project management or the engineering or the desktop publishing or management. And when we get the salaries of translators in Europe, most are, to speak in euros, most of the annual salary 30 to 50. There's sort of a hump there. That's where you are. Part-timers are less. Full-timers, they're doing okay. And then there's a bump right out, 90 to 105. These are the people who have set up companies and still call themselves translators, remarkably enough. Okay, there's big money being made by people who've moved up in the industry. We didn't find systematic signs of adverse selection in this part of the market. Well, for the very big companies, what's happening is they're outsourcing their actual translation work to, where does it go? It goes to Beijing, and then they outsource to Mongolia or to India. Lionbridge outsources a lot to India for work into English. So globalization is affecting it. It goes beyond what we can study in Europe. Where we did find market disorder, in the sense of good translators leaving the profession, is in anything to do with social services, public services for immigrant communities, including the hospitals and the courts, particularly the courts. These are just some press clippings, okay? I'll go through them quickly. 40 police in Malaga interrogated for corruption. Nothing. Actually, 40 is a lot, I must admit, yeah? Two interpreters arrested, one of them accused of selling information. Okay. If you don't pay them enough, they'll find ways to get paid. Okay. 3 police interpreters sentenced for falsifying the nationality of immigrants. Why would they do that, I wonder? If you have, we have a large Pakistani community in certain parts of Spain, and particularly around Barcelona. For Urdu, who are the interpreters for Urdu? Well, members of the same community. Hey, we're going to help our family, our extended family, our national identity. It's part of the deprofessionalization that comes from not getting paid very much. 2 sworn translators arrested for relations with money forgery operation. I was just hoping that these guys managed to get paid, but perhaps not in real money. I like this. This is where it gets good. Trial suspended because Chinese translator does not know Spanish. I didn't put it here, but I was going around this morning. I did find a clipping that gave figures. It claimed that more than 1,000 trials in Spain had been suspended over the past 3 years because of the absence of reliable interpreters. That is, either they couldn't find an interpreter for the language, or the interpreter showed up, or the interpreter was speaking Spanish that the judge couldn't understand. Okay? Trial suspended because the only translator of Chinese was the accused. Okay, this is... You get into... Actually, I haven't got it here, but my favorite story, it's not in there, but it's all over the press if you search for it. This is, I was telling Bob, this is a translator for Urdu who was sent out by the company to the airport in Madrid, to Barajas, because they've got somebody coming in illegally, they have to give them a quick, it's called a Kangaroo Trial, not because I'm Australian, but because the guy's got no way of getting out of it. And they have to have the interpreter present. So the interpreter shows up, the policeman's there to take them in to see the judge. The policeman gets the identity document of the interpreter, checks it, it's on his list of wanted people. The interpreter gets shipped into the trial and taken out. Okay, why does this happen? Well, for the same reason, because the interpreters for these immigrant languages, firstly, they're not trained at all. Nobody's offering any training in basic ethics to these people. And community ethics say you help your family first, or your ethnic identity first. Second, they're not paid very much. What's happened in Spain is that, gee, 5 or 6, I think about 5 years ago, this became a problem for the public administration. It was very expensive, and it is, because you have lots and lots of different languages. So they did what any clear-headed government administration would do. They outsourced it to a private company. What did the private company do? They reduced the fees for translators by 30%, and they went around and just got lots of people on their books and had no way of checking the language competence of the people on their books. Okay? Hence, the 1,000 trials suspended since that company took over the running of that. What's appalling here is that Britain has just done the same thing last year. April the 1st, it wasn't an April Fool's joke, but it was on April the 1st, 2011. All interpreting and translation services for the British justice system was outsourced to a private company. What's happened, and if you follow the press, it's quite harrowing. These people, they're not bad people, I think, but they do have to cut costs, they do have to make a profit, so the prices go down, and they are being boycotted by the interpreters. So the Greater Manchester area, for example, just has no trials happening because interpreters don't want to work for this company, and they don't go. Okay? Now, this is adverse selection, ladies and gentlemen. Prices go down, competent people are no longer in that market, the people left are the incompetent people, nobody's going to trust the interpreters, and you've lost any kind of social interaction that's worth calling social. Our recommendations to the Directorate General for Translation, number one, address immigrant languages, and I'm using the term paraprofessionals, which I take from NATI in Australia. NATI recognizes that particularly for indigenous languages in Australia, but also for all the many immigrant languages, that they're not going to find fully trained professionals who've passed a professional exam. They're going to work with paraprofessionals. So let's look at them, see what they can do, give them a bit of training, give them some ethics, and certify them at that level. Australia's had this problem for a lot longer than Europe, and Europe has not come to terms with it at all. But our clients are full of glorious rhetoric about multilingualism is the identity of Europe. They are very good at maintaining the big national languages of Europe. Not very good on the regional languages, and absolutely hopeless on anything like a non-European language. And it's not being addressed by the policy. It's not something our clients wanted to see in this report, and that's why it's number one recommendation. To irritate them. To say, you know, you wanted us to find some way to justify you setting up a certification system. Well, folks, this is the problem over here. Deal with this one. And to deal with this one, you're going to have to look at what they've been doing in Australia. You're going to have to look at what they've been doing in Canada. You're going to have to look at all the other countries that have faced this problem for longer than we have in Europe. Bourdieu said, what is sociology? He said, it's une science qui dérange. It's a science that upsets. Our function as sociologists is not to reproduce the common truths that everybody wants to hear, is to present the things that people don't want to see that are happening in society. And I hope that's what we did by putting that up at number one. The others need to look at more than European languages. recognize that signaling certification is or should have a market value, so the people who benefit from it pay, but anyway. Okay, cross-border recognition. This is a globalizing cross-border activity. The systems, the signals that we have are national and should not be. And then look at what's happening. As we carried out this survey, there have been debates on this very issue in Canada, in the United States, in Australia, and in China. And Australia at the moment is reviewing its entire certification system in parallel. You know, everybody's doing the same thing, nobody's talking with each other. Okay, and be wary. I won't go into this, but I'm going to write an article on why translator training in European universities is not at professional levels. I'm going to lose a lot of very good friends, but okay.